both gentlemen or yeomen bold, or whatsoever you are, to have a stately story told. Attention, now prepare. It is a tale of Robin Hood that I to you will tell, which being rightly understood I know will please you well. This Robin so much talked about was once a man of fame, entitled Earle of Huntington, Lord Robin Hood by name. In courtship and magnificence his carriage won him praise, and greater favour from his prince than any in his days. In bounteous liberality he too much did excel, and loved men of quality more than exceeding well. His great revenues all he sold for wine and costly cheer, he kept 300 bowmen bold he shooting loved so dear. No archer living in his time with him might well compare, he practised all his youthful prime that exercise most rare. At last by his profuse expense he had consumed his wealth, and being outlawed by his prince in woods he lived by stealth. The abbot of St. Mary's rich, to whom he money owed, his hatred to this earl was such that he his downfall wrought. So being outlawed, as 'tis told, he with a crew went forth, of lusty swordsmen stout and bold, and robbed in the north. Among the rest one little John, a yeoman bold and free, who could, if it stood him upon, with ease encounter 3. 100 men in all he got, with whom the story says 300 common men durst not hold combat anyways. They Yorkshire woods frequented much, and Lancashire also, wherein their practices were such that they wrought mickle woe. None rich durst travel to and fro, though never so strongly armed, but by these thieves so strong in show, they still were robbed and harmed. His chiefest spite to the clergy was, that lived in monstrous pride, no one of them he would let pass along the highway side. But first they must to dinner go, and afterwards to shrift, for many a one he served so, thus while he lived by theft. No monks nor friars he would let go without paying their dues, if they thought much to be used so, their stones he made them lose. For such as they the country filled with bastards in those days, which to prevent these sparks did geld all that came by their ways. But Robin Hood so gentle was, and bore so brave a mind, if any in distress did pass to them, he was so kind, that he would give and lend to them, to help them at their need. This made all poor men pray for him, and wish he well might speed. The widow and the fatherless he would send money to, and those whom famine did oppress found him a friendly foe. Nor would he do a woman wrong, but see her safe conveyed, he would protect with power strong all those who craved his aid. The abbot of St. Mary's then, who him undid before, was riding with 200 men and gold and silver store. But Robin Hood upon him set with his courageous sparks, and all the coin perforce did get, which was 12,000 marks. He bound the abbot to a tree, and would not let him pass, before that to his men and he his lordship had said mass. Which being done, upon his horse he set him fast astride, and with his face towards his arse he forced him to ride. His men were keen to be his guide, for he rode backward home. The abbot being thus vilified did sorely chafe and fume. Thus Robin Hood did vindicate his former wrongs received, for 'twas this covetous prelate that him of land bereaved. The abbot he rode to the king with all the haste he could, and to his grace he everything exactly did unfold, and said if that no course were ta'en by force or stratagem, to take this rebel and his train no man should pass for them. The king protested by and by unto the abbot then, that Robin Hood with speed should die with all his merry men. But ere the king did any send, he did another feat, which did his grace much more offend. The fact indeed was great, for in a short time after that the king's receivers went toward London with the coin they got for his highness's northern rent. Bold Robin Hood and Little John with the rest of their train, not dreading law, set them upon and did their gold obtain. The king much moved at the same, and the abbot's talk also, in this his anger did proclaim, and sent word to and fro, that whosoever alive or dead could bring him Robin Hood, should have 1,000 marks well paid in gold and silver good. This promise of the king did make full many yeomen bold, attempt stout Robin Hood to take with all the force they could. But still when any came to him within the gay green wood, he entertainment gave to them with venison fat and good, and showed to them such martial sport with his long bow and arrow, that they of him did give report, how that it was great sorrow that such a worthy man as he should thus be put to shift, being late a lord of high degree, of living quite bereft. The king to take him more and more sent men of mickle might, but he and his still beat them sore and conquered them in fight, or else with love and courtesy to him he won their hearts. Thus still he lived by robbery throughout the northern parts. And all the country stood in dread of Robin Hood and his men, for stouter lads ne'er lived by bread in those days nor since then. The abbot, which before I named, sought all the means he could to have by force this rebel ta'en and his adherents bold. Therefore he armed 500 men with furniture complete, but the outlaws slew half of them and made the rest retreat. The longbow and the arrow keen they were so used unto, that still they kept the forest green in spite of the proudest foe. 12 of the abbot's men he took, who came him to have ta'en, when all the rest the field forsook. These he did entertain with banqueting and merriment, and having used them well, he to their lord them safely sent, and willed them him to tell, that if he would be pleased at last to beg of our good king, that he might pardon what was past, and him to favour bring, he would surrender back again the money which before was taken by him and his men from him and many more. Poor men might safely pass by him, and some that way would choose, for well they knew that to help them he evermore did use. But where he knew a miser rich that did the poor oppress, to feel his coin his hand did itch, he'd have it more or less. And sometimes when the highway failed and he his courage rouses, he and his men have oft assailed such rich men in their houses. So that through dread of Robin then and his adventurous crew, the misers kept great store of men, which else maintained but few. King Richard of that name the first, surnamed Cuer de Lyon, went to defeat the pagans cursed who kept the coasts of Zion. The Bishop of Ely, Chancellor, was left as Viceroy here, who like a potent emperor did proudly domineer. Our chronicles of him report that commonly he rode with 1,000 horse from court to court, where he would make abode. He riding down towards the north with his aforesaid train, Robin and his did issue forth them all to entertain. And with the gallant grey goose wing they showed to them such play, that made their horses kick and fling, and down their riders lay. Full glad and fain the bishop was for all his 1,000 men, to seek what means he could to pass from out of Robin's ken. 200 of his men were killed, and 80 horses good, 30 who did as captives yield were carried to the greenwood, which afterwards were ransomed for 20 marks a man. The rest set spurs to horse and fled to the town of Warrington. The bishop sore enraged then did in King Richard's name muster a power of northern men these outlaws bold to tame. But Robin with his courtesy so won the meaner sort, that they were loath on him to try what rigour did import. So that bold Robin and his train did live unhurt of them, until King Richard came again from fair Jerusalem. And then the talk of Robin Hood his royal ears did fill. His grace admired that in the greenwood he thus continued still, so that the country far and near did give him great applause, for none of them need stand in fear but such as broke the laws. He wished well unto the king, and prayed still for his health, and never practised anything against the commonwealth. Only because he was undone by the cruel clergy then, all means that he could think upon to vex such kind of men, he enterprised with hateful spleen, in which he was to blame, for falls of some to wreak his teen on all that by him came. With wealth which he by robbery got, 8 almshouses he built, thinking thereby to purge the blot of blood which he had spilt. Such was their blind devotion then, depending on their works, which if 'twere true we Christian men inferior were to Turks. But to speak true of Robin Hood, and wrong him not a jot, he never would shed any man's blood that him invaded not, nor would he injure husbandmen that toiled at cart and plough, for well he knew were it not for them to live no man knew how. The king in person with some lords to Nottingham did ride, to try what strength and skill affords to crush these outlaws' pride. And as he once before had done, he did again proclaim, what whosoever would take upon to bring to Nottingham, or any place within the land, rebellious Robin Hood should be preferred in place to stand with those of noble blood. When Robin Hood heard of the same, within a little space, into the town of Nottingham a letter to his grace he shot upon an arrowhead one evening cunningly, which was brought to the king and read before his majesty. The tenor of this letter was that Robin would submit, and be true liegeman to his grace in anything that's fit, so that his highness would forgive him and his merry men all, if not he must in the greenwood live and take what chance did fall. The king would fain have pardoned him, but that some lords did say, this precedent will much condemn your grace another day. While that the king and lords did stay debating on this thing, some of these outlaws fled away unto the Scottish king, for they supposed if he were ta'en or to the king did yield, by the commons all the rest of his train full quickly would be quelled. Of more than full 100 men, but 40 tarried still, who were resolved to stick to him, let fortune work her will. If none had fled, all for his sake had got their pardon free, the king to favour meant to take his merry men and he. But ere the pardon to him came, this famous archer died. His death and manner of the same I'll presently describe, for being vexed to think upon his followers' revolt, in melancholy passion he did recount their fault. Perfidious traitors, said he then, in all your dangers past, have I you guarded as my men to leave me thus at last? This sad perplexity did cause a fever, as some say, which him unto confusion draws, though by a stranger way. This deadly danger to prevent, he hied him with all speed unto a nunnery, with intent for his health's sake to bleed. A faithless friar did pretend in love to let him blood, but he by falsehood wrought the end of famous Robin Hood. The friar, as some say, did this to vindicate the wrong, which to the clergy he and his had done by power strong. Thus died he by treachery, who could not die by force. Had he lived longer, certainly King Richard in remorse had unto favour him received, he brave men elevated. 'Tis pity he was of life bereaved by one which he so hated. A treacherous leech this friar was, to let him bleed to death, and Robin was, methinks, an ass to trust him with his breath. His corpse the prioress of the place, the next day that he died, caused to be buried in mean case close by the highway side, and over him she caused a stone to be fixed on the ground, an epitaph was set thereon wherein his name was found. The date of the year and day also she made to be set there, that all who by the way did go might see it plain appear, that such a man as Robin Hood was buried in that place, and how he lived in the green wood and robbed there for a space. It seems that though the clergy he had put to mickle woe, he should not quite forgotten be, although he was their foe. This woman, though she did him hate, yet loved his memory, and thought it wondrous pity that his fame with him should die. This epitaph, as records tell, within this 100 years, by many was discerned well, but time all things outwears. His followers, when he was dead, some received to grace, the rest to foreign countries fled and left their native place. Although his funeral was but mean, this woman had in mind, lest his fame should be buried clean from those that came behind. For certainly before nor since no man e'er understood, under the reign of any prince, of one like Robin Hood. Full 13 years and something more these outlaws lived thus, feared of the rich, loved of the poor, a thing most marvellous. A thing impossible to us this story seems to be, none dares be now so venturous, but times are changed we see. We that live in these latter days of civil government, if need be, have 100 ways such outlaws to prevent. In those days men more barbarous were, and lived less in awe. Now God be thanked, people fear more to offend the law. No roaring guns were then in use, they dreamt of no such thing. Our English men in fight did choose the gallant grey goose wing, in which activity these men through practice were so good, that in those days none equalled them, especially Robin Hood. So that it seems, keeping in caves, in woods and forests thick, they beat a multitude with staves, their arrows did so prick. And none durst near unto them come, unless in courtesy, all such he bravely would send home with mirth and jollity. Which courtesy won him such love, as I before have told, 'twas the chief cause that he did prove more prosperous than he could. Let us be thankful for these times of plenty, truth and peace, and leave our great and horrid crimes, lest they cause this to cease. I know there's many feigned tales of Robin Hood and his crew, but Chronicles, which seldom fails, reports this to be true. Let none then think this is a lie, for if 'twere put to the worst, they may the truth of all descry in the reign of Richard the First. If any listener please to try, as I direction show, the truth of this brave history, he'll find it true, I know. And I shall think my labour well bestowed to purpose good, when shall be said that I did tell true tales of Robbin Hood.